Hey bookworms, Amanda here, and today I'm here with a it's exciting, at least for me, video, and as you can see by the title, I will be reading for you guys the very first chapter of my novel, but before I do that, I'm just going to kind of do a little bit of a backstory. Some of you guys know I'm writing a novel, some of you don't, so I'm just going to kind of go through a little bit of backstory and like tell you guys what the heck's going on here if you don't already know, and just do that, and then I'm going to read aloud. The first chapter of my novel is about 4 pages long. And yeah, so this is my video for today. I hope you guys enjoy. So for those of you who don't know, I did start writing a novel back 2 summers ago, not the summer 2013, the summer 2012. I started writing a young adult futuristic fantasies type of novel, and that was inspired by the fact that I was sitting at the library one day and I really wanted to read a certain type of book, but no book like that existed. And then I found a quote that said, if you want to read a book that no one has written, you must write it yourself. And so I just kind of brought out a notebook and jotted down some story ideas, and the novel was born. I then let my novel sit in my desk by itself for until about November 2012, when I brought it out again because I heard about NaNoWriMo. And if you guys don't know what NaNoWriMo is, it's basically a challenge to write 5,000 words of the rough draft of your novel in the entire month of November. That challenge did not go so well for me. I did not meet the goal at all, but I did start up my novel, and I did get a jump start on it, and ever since then I've been steadily working on it. I did do NaNoWriMo again this year. I did not finish my novel again. I'm still on the same draft of the novel. It's been 2 years. And I haven't finished it yet, and I feel like a really terrible person, but I plead the fact that I have schoolwork and lots of other things that demand my time because I'm a busy teenager, not somebody that has a lot of time to sit down and write full time. But anyway, I am not finished with my novel as we speak. I have written about 13,000 words, I believe, and I'm still not even close to being done, so we'll see where that goes. But recently I had a person that I volunteer with at the library tell me that he would really like to read part of my novel. So that got me to thinking, hey, I wonder if I've got blog followers, Tumblr followers, YouTube subscribers, Instagram and Twitter followers that would want to hear part of my novel. So I decided to bite the bullet and break it out and print it out and read it to you guys. I must admit I'm very nervous. Sharing a novel you've written yourself is very different than sharing something you've written for fan fiction, and I have yet to experience that. This will be the first time anybody has ever heard this novel, part of this novel. I have not shown it to my parents, friends, boyfriend, people on the internet. Nobody's seen it. This is the first time. Mostly because most of the people that I talk to in person in my real life, they want to wait till it's done. But this is just going to be kind of a little teaser, yeah, you guys, the description for my novel will be down below in the description bar, and it is tentative. I've changed the description like 1,000 times. I'm not very good at coming up with like teasers, but I did my best. And also this novel, I call the tentative title, which is probably what I'm going to stick with, is Embers, and then I'm going to plan to, and this is really lofty, but I'm going to plan to write 2 other books, like a trilogy, so I already have titles for those 2, which is really weird of me, but so it's going to be Embers, Ashes, and Inferno, and so that's my plan for the novel. But anyway, the whole story is told in first-person present tense, and it is told from my protagonist, Ember's, point of view, so yeah, I think that's about it. So it is with great pleasure and great anticipation and even greater amounts of nerves that I present to you the very first chapter of the rough draft. When I say rough, I mean really rough draft of Embers. I walk to the edge of the roof and look up, craning my neck and tilting my face to gaze at the glowing red lights mounted on the rock ceiling above me. The low hum of the generators barely masks the quiet shuffling of early morning miners off to the west cave for another day of excavation. I take deep breaths, smelling the scent of earth and dust, and stretch my arms out to release tension in my arms. My left hand strikes something soft and solid, and I jerk my head back, spinning away from the edge of the roof. "Ember?" my father says in greeting, his deep-set blue eyes smiling at me. I offer him a small smile in return and resume looking at the reddish-orange lights above us. They're flickering now, brightening and dimming in time with the generator's ebb and flow. "It looks like fire," I murmur to myself, looking at the orbs. Father chuckles. "What is your fascination with fire, sun, and ice?" I shrug, picturing the stack of worn, dusty library books living on my nightstand that are full of pictures of sun dancing off water, ice coating city streets, and fire burning away darkness. "The pictures are beautiful," I say. Even if the world above us was evil and contaminated, there still must have been beauty, or those pictures wouldn't exist. My father smiles. Your mind is a rare gift, Ember. Use it well. He walks toward the stone steps built into the side of our house and descends. I follow him, wondering what my idle imaginings have to do with my unique mind. I brush those thoughts aside as I enter the house. Our kitchen could be classified as a normal family scene here in the Enclave. A bustling mother, whistling father, and children crowded around the table. I give my mother a hug and a kiss on the cheek before seating myself at our old wooden table between my elder brother and younger sister. Alair, my older brother, sits stiffly in his seat, lost in thought. His dark brown hair and gray eyes perfectly mirror our mother's, but his steady, focused gaze is purely our father. Rika, my younger sister, sits on my other side, her brown eyes dancing as all little children's tend to do. Rika bounces in her seat, her braid swinging across her shoulders. Will you take me to the library today? She asks me, her brown eyes sparkling. I smile. Of course. We'll go right after final bell. I turn to my older brother. Do you want to come? He rolled his eyes. I don't have time for books, Ember, he says in a lofty tone. I shake my head as I see my father shoot him a warning glance. Alair turned 18 3 weeks ago and has decided since then that he was better than my sister and I. He can never be angry at Rika, who at 10 years old was the darling of the family, but he and I were frequently at odds. I don't like to be commanded by anyone except my due authorities, and as far as I'm concerned, my older brother is not in charge of me. I focus my attention on my breakfast plate, which Rika has carefully handed me. Are you taking a shift tonight? My mother asks my father, setting a breakfast plate in front of him as well. Father nods, taking a bite of food, and my mother sighs. How many extra shifts are you going to take it on? As many as I can, he answers, shortly but not unkindly. Too many workers have been getting ill, and I want to aid whenever I can. My mother sighs again. What about the rumors? I open my mouth to ask what they're talking about, and then close it. My siblings and I are raised to be polite and respectful, and speaking out of turn was punishable. That was the only rule of our society I really had trouble with. I like to speak my mind unhindered, however, that was seldom allowed. I do not fear tales spun by idle tongues, my father replies, scraping his plate and winking at me. I smile, remembering that quote from one of his favorite books. My father and I both loved to read, and he was the one that taught me the alphabet using old books from the trunk in the basement. Father stands, resting his hands on Mother's shoulders, and plants a light kiss on her forehead. I promise, Kita, I will be safe. My mother looks at him, a worried expression on her face. As he heads out the door, Father pats Alair on the shoulder. See you later, son. He kisses Rika on the head and waves to me on his way out the door to the mining center. School will start soon, my mother says, her face brightening as she shoos us out of our seats and out the door. I pull my satchel off the wooden hook by the kitchen door, hug my mother and Rika goodbye, and exit my house, pulling the worn back door shut behind me. Once outside, I breathe in again the scent of dirt and rock and venture down the sidewalk to the one main road in our city. As I walk, I nod politely to passers-by, stopping occasionally to exchange a word or two of greeting with friends of my father. My family, while not affluent in our small town, is well known, largely due to the kind nature and giving heart of my mother and father. Since they were young, they always helped anyone who needed it, and that legacy has been passed down to my brother, sister, and me. I hear footsteps behind me and smile as a raven-haired girl skids to a stop next to me, her thin shoulders heaving with the exertion of running. Good morning, Lena, I say with a laugh. She shakes her hair out of her face and readjusts her satchel on her back. How do you always leave so soon? She asks, still catching her breath. I shrug. In truth, I leave early because I love the quiet peace of early morning streets and the silence broken only by my footsteps. I feel like a heroine in one of my novels, an adventurer maybe, or a noblewoman. But if I were to tell my friends, as understanding as they are, they would think I was a bit odd. Children my age don't usually like to be left alone. Ember, Lena says, shaking my arm. I look at her. You haven't heard a word I said, have you? I shake my head in apology while she rolls her hazel eyes good-naturedly. I was asking if you talked to Corden lately. I groan. Please don't start this again, Lena. Lena giggles and I sigh. Corden Holler is an outgoing, friendly boy that lives down the road from Lena. The three of us have known each other since childhood, and he and Lena especially are very close. Did you have another fight? I ask, since I usually serve as the go-between in any of their disagreements. While she is small, Lena is very strong-willed and as such tends not to guard her mouth as often as she should. No, not this time, Lena says, a faint blush coloring her pale cheeks. I stare. Lena, do you... A bell chimes, cutting me off, and Lena grabs my arm, her eyes relieved. We're going to be red-marked if we don't hurry. The two of us race to the front gates of the school, only just on time. We receive our daily marks, black ink that marks us present at school on the back of our hands and washes off as soon as we bathe at home. And Lena drags me to the south corner of the fence, the place we always go to wait for school to begin. We wait about 5 minutes before seeing Corden strolling toward us, an easy smile on his face and his hands in his pockets. Lena greets him with a hug, and he and I slap palms. You're late, I say, nodding to the red ink on his arm. He sighs, laughing under his breath. Got into another fight today with my dad, he says easily, making it clear it was nothing to worry about. I let the subject drop, but Lena looks at our friend with concern. What was it about this time? She asked in a low whisper, seemingly forgetting that I'm right there and can hear everything she's saying. Corin's eyes flicker from her to me. I stand, brushing my hands on my pants. I'll just go, I say awkwardly. Corin and Lena nod absentmindedly before turning to each other and beginning a conversation in hushed tones. Ignoring the sting of loneliness that prickles over my skin and through my heart, I meander along the fence, walking around to the back of the school. The lights nailed into the top of the enclave don't reach back to the dim alleyway, so I have to strain my eyes in the sudden darkness. Water drips from a pipe and my feet squelch in the mud. I'm about to turn back when I hear whispering. As I walk closer, it turns to words. I strain my ears, but I can't make out what they're saying. I gasp as a dark figure suddenly materializes in front of me. I clench my hands around my book-laden satchel, still on my back, prepared to swing it as a weapon. The figure stands still, not advancing on me, but it continues to whisper incoherently. He turns away from me suddenly and I step back, breathing hard. The bell rings and I turn around again toward the sound. When I look back, the figure's gone. You imagined it, I tell myself. It was just an apparition, like in your novels. But as I climb the stairs to my classroom, I hear the whispers in my head and know that it was very real. I spend the rest of the day trying to banish my chance encounter from my mind. During lunch hour, I sit with Corden and Lane, and the three of us chatter on about the upcoming school party. After school, Rika comes running to me, her eyes dancing. I smile down at her as she slips her hand into mine. Let's go, she shouts, pulling me down the street. I let her drag me along, twisting around only to wave goodbye to Lena, who gives me an amused smile. Rika and I stay on the far right side of the street, as is custom for children without their parents' accompaniment. Rika's child-sized satchel slips down her arm, and I take it from her hand before slinging it onto my own back. A few crumbs are visible on the shoulder of her gray sweater, and I brush them away. She rolls her eyes at my mothering gestures in typical 10-year-old fashion, but says nothing as we near the stone building that houses the Enclave's public collection of books. Her eyes widen and nod, as I'm sure mine do every time, and her footsteps and breathing become hushed as we enter the library. It, while small, is one of the most grandiose buildings in the Enclave. Granite arches sweep from east to west, and 4 columns stretching from floor to ceiling support the roof. Quotes and scrolling script decorate the arches and columns, the many languages, types, and letters drawing the eye of many passers-by. The familiar scent of paper, rock, and dust fill my nostrils as I steer Rika to my favorite section, fantasy. In the old days, books and libraries were categorized by numbers, letters, and authors. Libraries were institutions the size of the underground enclave itself. But here, our small amount of books was sorted by genre and by author within their section. I run my fingers over the spines of my favorites while Rika pulls books from the young readers section below me. The stories that each book tells spring to my mind as my fingertips brush their covers. Tales of battles and myths, creatures from different dimensions and warriors in black or bronze. Magic, sword fights, and firefights. Legends and imaginings brought to life through skilled pens and great minds. I sigh, thinking about my favorite characters. They were all heroes with strong hearts, able hands, and unique abilities. They wanted to change their world, and so they did. I could never be like that. Keeping one eye on Rika, I stepped behind a velvet curtain where the forbidden books were kept. No one was allowed back here except government officials, but I managed to sneak in once or twice a month. I pattered across the small chamber and pulled a green and gold book off the shelf. The ancient pages crackle as I open the cover and stare in awe at the photograph in front of me. Tongues of fire, red hot and beautiful in their deadliness, burn amongst dead and fallen trees. Although the picture is old, the colors are still vibrant, and I can almost hear the crackling of flames and the groaning of weakened trees. I turn the page over to a painting of green hills and clear blue skies. This painting, unlike the photo before it, radiates peace and calm. I wonder how nature could be so cruel, and then so quiet and still. Some have said the world above is ugly in its disasters. I always disagreed. I think the world is beautiful. Maybe it still is.